Despite how Knoxville looks on a map, land here is way more complicated than people expect. When you're moving in from out of state, it's easy to assume that Knoxville has land everywhere. You see trees, hills, open spaces, and you think, why isn't everyone just buying land? Have as much as you want. But buying land can be hard here, and it's definitely a process that can be complicated. A lot of times that can catch people off guard. So in this video, I want to explain what's going on with land in Knoxville, why it behaves the way it does, and why understanding this early on is going to make your process a lot simpler and easier if you think about buying, building, getting acreage, or just choosing where to live long term. I'm not saying that land doesn't exist here. It definitely does, but the way land works in Knoxville is very different than people expect. One of the biggest misunderstandings about Knoxville is how much buildable land actually exists. Knoxville feels open because the city spreads out instead of building straight up. But a lot of that space is limited by geography, rivers, hills, mountains, flood zones. Protected green space naturally restrict where development can happen. That's why areas closer in that are very, very old, like Bearden, Sequoia Hills, and parts of South Knoxville, they don't have as much vacant land left at all, actually. Most of it was built out decades ago. So when people say, why is land so much more expensive closer into the city? The answer is simple. There just isn't that much left of it. Now, when people see a small lot near town selling for a higher price, it feels confusing. But you're not paying for just dirt. You're paying for access to existing roads and infrastructure, public water, sewer, schools, jobs, shorter commutes, restaurants, amenities, things like that. That's why even modest lots inside the city or inner city can be expensive. Now, as you move farther out towards places like Gibbs, Coreyton, Powell a little bit, high school, or even farther out into the county, land becomes more available. But availability doesn't always mean simplicity, and it's not always as good a deal as you think it's going to be. Cheap land is rarely cheap. There's a reason why a lot of buyers aren't buying the cheap land. People see acreage listed at a low price and they assume they found a deal. What they don't always see are the extra steps that come with it. And these steps are doable. I've done them myself, but they can be complicated and involve a lot of calls to the city, or the county rather. A lot of land in Knox County doesn't have sewer. They may not have public water. It's almost always going to require septic approval if you have to get a septic. You might need grading or driveway work. In East Tennessee, septics are common in the county, especially on raw land, but not automatic. Two lots next to each other can have completely different outcomes depending on soil, slope, and drainage. That's why some land sits for a long time. It's a good price, but you can't get a perk. You can't get a septic on it. Inside the city and denser suburbs, sewer is much more common. Once you move outside those areas, where septic becomes the norm. And septic systems depend on soil quality, lot layout, slope, available space. A failed or limited perk test doesn't mean the land is unusable. It just means you might not be able to build that 3-bedroom, 2-bath house you want. You might have to build 2 bedrooms and an office. Your plans might have to change. That's something that a lot of relocating buyers don't expect, especially if they're coming from areas where sewer is mass available. The thing people underestimate is utilities. Just because land exists doesn't mean it has power at the road, public water nearby, again, access to city sewer or county sewer, easy access to driveways. Bringing utilities in can add tens or thousands of dollars to a project depending on the distance and the terrain. That's why land closer to existing neighborhoods often costs more up front, but can be cheaper overall. And you're not paying for just the land, you're paying for whatever utilities are already in place. This is also why you see new neighborhoods pop up in specific areas. Places like Hardin Valley, Farragut, Powell. It attracts builders because utilities already exist, the zoning is predictable, roads and schools can support growth. That doesn't mean land elsewhere isn't valuable, it's just going to serve a different type of buyer. This is the part people don't always realize. Buying land isn't just about square footage or price per land or the biggest house you can put on a piece of land. It's about how you want your day-to-day life to work. People who choose areas like Northeast Knox, North Knox, they're usually going to value space, privacy, fewer neighbors. They're going to want to have goats, chickens, maybe a couple of cows. People who stay closer in usually value convenience, shorter drives, easier infrastructure. Neither is better, they just lead to very different daily experiences. The mistake I see isn't people buying the wrong piece of land. It's buying land before understanding what land requires. Land comes with a lot more decisions than a house. Like access, utilities, septic, timelines, equipment. You're probably going to have to buy a tractor. You're 100% going to want to have a tractor. And these costs can overrun. That doesn't make land a bad option. It just means land rewards patience and planning. If you're moving to Knoxville, land can look like an easy shortcut to space and affordability. But understanding how land actually works here can save you money, delays, frustrations, unrealistic expectations, a whole lot of mowing. 3 hours to mow 3 acres isn't that fun every single week. People who understand and take time to understand these trade-offs tend to be much happier with their long-term choice. Land in Knoxville isn't scarce. Build-ready land in the right location with the right infrastructure, that's what's limited. Once you understand how geography, utilities, septic, and access shape availability, land starts to make a lot more sense here. And for the right buyer, it can still be an awesome thing to buy.